What's going on, everybody? Let's crank this camera on. We've got some work to do tonight. Come on, there we are. There we have it. We are back at it with our Emperor's Children this evening. Got our base coats and our trim blocked in. Combination of gold on the trim and a little bit of a bluish silver for some of those highlights. So we've got to get these other details figured out. What we're going to kick off with tonight, of course, are the draperies that adorn the model. And we're going to talk about some things that we've learned through the process. Before we get started, of course, thank you guys for tuning in, coming to hang out, or checking this video out after the fact. If you like the content, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't yet subscribed, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That way you know every time we go live with these paint streams. Big shout out, of course, to the sponsors of this video series, Too Thin Coats, that's Transatlantis Games, bringing up those silky pigments. We've got Artist Opus in the house as well, with their dry brush line, as well as their S&M series. You're going to see some of those brushes here tonight as well. Of course, shout out to Game Envy. Game Envy is the purveyor of these nice gadgets like our wet palette that we're going to be using. And of course these painting handles you'll see intermittently as well. And of course, last but not least, Spray Gunner, you know, bringing us our airbrush and all of our airbrush accessories. So thank you guys all so much that support the channel, whether it be, you know, the vendors who are providing us with you know, products to utilize and show off, of course, as well to you guys. Just tuning in to watch the show is actually great support for the channel. So thank you guys all very much for that. I'm going to give a moment for people to start rolling in and prepare this wet palette. Looking to get this thing done tonight. If you didn't tune in to the first one, what we're trying to accomplish here is not a showcase. It's not Golden Demon level. What we're trying to do is something that is a good and efficient paint scheme that will allow us to get a full army done fairly quickly, but also have it look a little above average, right? A little above average is enough for me. We don't need to go crazy with it. It doesn't need to be award-winning. Just needs to be complete and something that we can be happy with. So that's the goal. As such, you know, there's going to be a lot of things on the model that we could do crazy cool stuff with, animal print on the tabards and, you know, a bunch of like very skillful blending on different points of interest, but that is not the game plan for this model here this evening. This is all about time and efficiency. We've got probably about 2 hours or so invested in the model to get it to this point. And of course, some of that is, you know, kind of thinking and trying to figure out what it is that we want to do. So now that we've got a plan, well, you know, that should be easy enough to replicate and do again and again. So I think the first thing we want to get started with tonight will be the robes. And then I think that we're going to go ahead and go from there right into getting the robes attached to the model. That way we can start figuring out the other little colors that we need in there. We're going to need tassels. We've got some detail here on this leg that I'm not sure what we want to do with yet, but probably something cool, ideally. And then we need to figure out like our pop color, what we're going to use on the eye lenses, what we're going to use on this power sword. Those are great opportunities to bring in, you know, a good bit of interest. So we're going to consult old trusty color wheel and employ some color theory to try and find something that works. We also need to figure out what we want to do with the leathery leg bit right here. So lots of questions to get answered, right? And the way we get that started is just by asking the questions. So tonight's first question, what are these robes going to look like? So let's go ahead and get this mug out of your way and go full art. All right, here we go. Haha, much better. Let's go ahead and slap this on here as well. This does not want to stand on its own, but that'll hold it just fine. So I'm quite happy with the progress that we've got thus far. You know, quite happy with it. But we've still got a lot of stuff to get going before we can say we're happy with the paint job. Still lots more painting to do. Get these little proctology mitt covers going in that beautiful goblin green. Shout out Harbor Freight. just re-upped my supply today. I hope they keep them in stock. If I see them start disappearing, well, I might just have to go buy out their inventory because, well, this green is the way to go. So we could do this with a brush. We could do this with an airbrush. I think what I'm going to opt for this evening is the brush, or airbrush rather, to get us started, and then we'll come in and do some fine detailing with the brush after the fact. Now, had it been attached already, we would likely just opt to go right into brushwork for it. But, you know, Julian got this model assembled for us, and, well, he was wise enough to do it in subassembly. So here are my thoughts. When we take a look at our color wheel, let's go ahead and grab it for reference here. Let's go ahead and dial that in a little bit for you focus-wise. So when we take a look at our color wheel, the colors that we are going to be the strongest in are in between these two, right in between the purple and the red-violet. All right. Now we do have it moving down towards blue in the darkest shadows, so we could even say this quadrant. All right. And what that's going to do is, if we want to go with a split complementary, that would just be yellow. Yellow is another vibrant color. Of course, yellow and purple play off well off of each other at full saturation, full vibrancy. What we're going to do is we're going to be taking and adding layers to it. Rather than using the color wheel outright, we're going to be not only contrasting colors across the color wheel, but we are also going to be contrasting our saturation, right? So using desaturated greens, you know, the green, yellow, green, I think is going to do pretty well in accomplishing what we want it to accomplish. And the lighter it gets, the higher up towards the top it gets, it'll be moving towards yellow. So where I think I'm going to be starting is right here in this range here. This is Troll Snot Green, Zombie Rot, and Twin Suns Yellow for our top and highest point of light. All right, our highlights for that yellow. That's going to keep us right here in the yellow-green to yellow, which is going to be position us pretty well across that color wheel. So we're going to give this a try and see. Once we've got our greens where we want them, we are going to do a similar thing that we did on the back by incorporating shadows using a blue. All right, and we're going to incorporate those same shadows into this drapery. So right now, I guess there's really not much left other than to, you know, cross our fingers, start blasting paint, and see where we end up. So let's go ahead and ready some paint. In the meantime, how is everyone doing tonight? What's going on, Julian? Great to see you. I hope you saw my text message about Mr. Sinister. We've got a huge lot of Marvel Crisis Protocol coming into the studio here very soon. And that model is among the ranks of the inventory that we're going to be pulling on. Quite a few models. Not as many Brotherhood or X-Men as I would have hoped, as that's really my love. I was really hoping to see maybe a Gambit, maybe a Rogue, maybe a Juggernaut. All three of those are missing. Matter of fact, all of the pieces that I have already collected. Looks like we've got duplicates coming to us from that list, but that's okay. We can get some stuff out here in the shop, so that way, as the community kind of starts building their coffers towards getting into Marvel Crisis Protocol with them, we'll have some stuff to be able to offer them, whether it's a loaner model to be able to learn the game, or models to purchase and take home and get some paint on. You know, either way, you know, having them on hand is going to really help us build that community, and super pumped for it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and just get started with this Troll Snot Green, which isn't really a snot color, right? Kind of a weird name for it, right? Because it is kind of a desaturated green. And when I think of snot, I guess, you know, maybe I've got too much Nurgle on the brain, but I definitely think of something that's got just a little bit more vibrancy to it. But, you know, this is Duncan Rhodes. Who would I be to argue with Duncan Rhodes, right? I will call it whatever it is he wants me to call it. Very grateful to have these on hand to use. Shout out Transatlantis Games. We're just going to get basically full coverage on this. So I've got just enough in here to really get all the paint coverage, trying not to waste too much paint. Most of this on the back side is not going to be visible, so we're going to make sure we focus the paint towards the bottom of it more than anything else. And these two pieces are held together and attached to this handle, just with a little silly putty, or a little like poster tack, if you will. So that way we can easily pull it right apart and then get to doing our gluing. This cape has got a really good sculpt to get some really interesting shadows in it. And we're gonna be looking to add texture to it, like we like to do with all of our cloth, right? We're gonna be looking to add that texture to it once we get to the brush stage. So right now is about making sure we've got the coverage that we need across the model for the pieces that are gonna be exposed. And we're gonna build up to our highlights, and then use this airbrush as well to reinforce those shadows. So nice little color cook in here, and you can kind of see the contrast at play, right? Not terribly far from the box art that GW is doing, maybe a little different, but their box art tends to be a really succinct color study, right? And this is no different. So it's, even if you're not painting box art, sometimes it's nice to have the reference of the box art to kind of influence the decisions you're going to make. Reference is key. As an artist, you're not going to know what everything looks like exactly. So you want to find good reference images of the thing you want to accomplish, and then just kind of do your math to get it where it needs to go. That's where, kind of being an artist is going to come into play there, is kind of solving that mystery. Now, I don't believe we're going to put any of this color anywhere else on the model. I think this is going to be exclusive to the robes. But we will see, some more golden yellows, some more yellow greens of different types that are hitting the model. Maybe even, as far as into some teal. Matter of fact, what we're likely going to see here is a bit of teal start to manifest itself as we start layering in our blues. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go right from our base coat, and we're going to jump right into our blue tones. I've got a couple of colors that I want to see. Right? I used Azurman blue over top of that purple. And I want to kind of know what that Azurman is going to look like if we were to use that as a shadow. But that's a pretty vibrant blue. We've also got Unkelian green, which is much closer to it's much more of a blue-green, kind of like a dark teal. That is the color I think is likely going to be the ticket. But let's just have ourselves a quick look. So here's Azurman. And you can see where that Azurman is filtered over top of that purple to give that really deep, cool purple feel on the back of it. And for the sake of solidarity, we are going to start here with Azurman, just because, we have this color in the scheme already, and it's in there as a filter. We're using this as a filter as well. And so ideally, this works and serves the purpose for us of the shadows in the environment that this character exists within. Right? Having unified shadows does do a great job of just tying everything together. All right? That's a pretty important part of color theory, is the recurrence of different atmospherics. Right? That way it just doesn't look like we picked cool colors, but we've got things that are kind of working in a synergy. Now this will likely need to get thinned quite a bit more because we do want opacity here. We don't want to be blasting a strong blue across it. All right, and you can see the color this is. Not a bad color, but yeah, let's thin it down just a little bit more thinner going back in the cup. Drop or two. Better to be thinner than we want it and be able to stack it than being thicker than we want it and ending up with something that's too saturated right away. This is a very pretty blue. well, let's give her a go. So we're going to just focus this. We're going to just focus this on the underneath. And we're doing this now, so that way when we come back across with what will effectively be our midtone, we can do that midtone with like a zenithal sort of mindset. And that will also help kind of overwrite some of the shadowing. So we're just going to pump this in here, and this is going to move this into that kind of teal range as we go, which is kind of good. Again, the time that we spend on the project is the thing we're trying to really get down tonight. We're trying to, oh, see, we're getting a little bit thicker than we want to on the blue. We might need to adjust, but let's just keep spraying in the meantime and find out. We know that we need to get in those recesses. We need to get under these folds. Oh, that's a little bit much there. A little bit much. We're just going to go ahead and wipe just a little bit of it off. But I think you can see why we didn't do all the layers of the green first. See if we can get that nice and crisp for you. Paint is a little bit loose here. Let's dial back some of the air pressure in here. See if we can get just something a little bit more feathered coming out. And really make sure we get it underneath those folds where the chain is. We want to make sure we get a little bit at the top where it's going to be overlapped by that little metal sort of casing. And then on the underside, most of this is going to get a fair amount of blue. If this is our shadow, most of this is going to be living in shadow. So though it's not really going to be visible too well from the front of the model, we're just going to go ahead and get that color baked in there. What's going on, White Chocolate? How are you? What's going on, Treachery? Great to see both of you. Thanks for tuning in. So, decent little volumetrics getting kicked off here. Really enhancing the shape of these ripples and folds. And giving us nice dramatic lighting. That's one of the things that we're really pushing for here, is we're trying to ramp up the drama. So I've got this right here is grouped up a bit more than I want. I'm just going to take a wet brush here, and I'm just going to run it along that recess right there. Encourage it to get where I want it to, and also prevent it from pooling up on us. All right, come on, focus. I sound like one of my teachers in high school, you know, begging for focus. That joke has not aged well, you know, 25 years ago or so. 27 years ago? Has it been that long? I think I just got older, Chad. Just now, in this very moment. I had to proxy Fulgrim with Rodigus, which is admittedly pretty funny. That is pretty funny indeed. So glad I finally got to order the rest of them. I can't wait to paint Fulgrim. So is Fulgrim ready to order right now? I haven't been paying attention to it. Is that now out and available? Because I'm going to be ready to get that Fulgrim painted too. We're going to do that up on stream as well. That one, of course, We're going to put a little extra love in it considering the nature of the model. So we're just going into the same cup that we use that troll snot green to mix. And we are adding in our zombie rot, which is much more desaturated. And we're going to go ahead and hit the top of this. And then from there, we'll be able to get those highlights on with that Twin Suns yellow. So we're going to just go ahead and get all of the paint out of the airbrush. Perfect. Spray a little water just to get it clean. Pre-orders are up. All right, well, I'm going to have to get ours pre-ordered for the stream here. That is an exciting one for sure. All right, let's just make sure our spray is coming through like we want it to. Okay, looks like it's spraying pretty nice. So now we're just going to do our top-down zenithal. And then you'll really start to see the drama taking place between the light and the shadows. Again, this is quite a desaturated color, but that should add nice contrast against the vibrancy of the rest of that model there. So we want something kind of pale. And I should have come back across it with that undertone to bridge the gap a little bit less, a little less in terms of the strength of the color, because that blue is picking up very strong. So what we might do is we might come back with that troll snot here in just a moment and add just a little bit more in places that we feel like could benefit from it. Oh, it is a hot one in the cave tonight, guys. I will tell you that. It is a little toasty in here, and I can already feel by the sweat on my brow that I forgot to aim the fan at me. So we're going to have to fix that in a moment for sure. So for those of you guys following along with that Frost Gargant project, it did show up today at JC's for the Battle to End Alzheimer's. But in typical UPS fashion, it showed up broken. So if you're going to be at the event, fingers crossed that we can put a fix on it that still looks good. But also fingers crossed that at the very least, that JC is able to capitalize on that insurance I paid for and let that insurance also go directly to that charity. So, hopefully it's not a bad thing. Hopefully it means maybe we get a couple extra dollars into the charity for it than we would have otherwise. But it's going to be a little bit before we know that for sure. Okay, I do think I want a little bit extra green in there. Let's turn this fan on. What's going on, William Payne? Good afternoon to you, sir. Good evening, Chris Joyner as well. And the fan was aiming in the exact opposite direction of me. So it was like taking all potential cool air that I might have gotten away from me. That's going to help a lot. The other thing I forgot to do, let's Let's get ourselves a little music going, huh? Of course, due to copyrights, I'm not going to be able to play music on the stream here with you guys. However, I can play it in my ear, and you can pick what you would like to listen to on your end as well. So I'm gonna choose just a little chill hop. Something nice, peaceful, and relaxing in the background. All right, now I think what we're going to do is we're going to glaze those shadows back in with our troll snot. But I definitely should have, once I've reinforced those shadows, I should have come back with that green through the airbrush before I came into the zombie rot green. But we live and we learn. We make mistakes and we pivot. And we improve our processes with each project, as we've discussed. We want this pretty loose for white chocolate. That'll add just a touch of vibrancy back to it in the green world. Yeah, I'd consider doing something like an animal print, but something tells me we're going to see a ton of that from painters out here. And I had to remind myself, right? We're off the Frost Gargant project. We're not trying to push ourselves to do as good a work as we can possibly do. Just keep that goal set on efficiency. So that being said, I think I might just go ahead and respray that green anyway. Although we're going backwards a step, I do think I'm going to get the results that I want to quicker going this route than I would with a paintbrush. So let's follow our instincts. William Payne swapped back to finish painting Drakari since one of the paints I chose for my Marines pooled when I used my airbrush and I had to strip them. Ooh. Yeah, that can be rough. That could be a feels bad. Did you use an ultrasonic or just let them sit in some sauce? Like what route did you go to strip them? We're just going to continuously move the model to try and protect those shadowy recesses. There is such a thing as too much contrast, and I think that's kind of what we were dealing with there. Used Totally Awesome. They've been sitting on the shelf forever. Let them sit for 24 hours. Use a toothbrush and hand scrub them. Yeah, old-fashioned way. I dig it. I can dig the hustle. I've been there more than my fair share of times, my friend. For sure. Those are going to look pretty good alongside each other. Come back with just a little bit more of that zombie rot. Get to see a little bit more of that blue under there now. That's what we're looking for. Grab a little bit more of that Azerman. We're going to make a really thin glaze out of it here on our wet palette. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and start adding to some of these recesses here. Just another little touch of that blue. Lots of angles on the cloak here, which does make trying to use zenithal as the means of getting these shadows kind of a little bit challenging. But that's what we make glazes for. I'm just going to go ahead and start adding some textures in here as well, since we're going to be coming back across this. It's just a bunch of little tiny lines to demonstrate, again, fabric. And because our paint is so thin here, they're barely going to show up. And a lot of them might even get overwritten once we come back across for our next step here. But that's what these experiments are for, right? Think we've got the right idea? Well, it's better to test it out and learn that you've got to go a different route before you commit to doing a ton of models with it. Starting to get a little bit more dynamic there. Just using this little bit of this zombie rot that is in the airbrush, thin down a good bit, and we're just using that to kind of feather that blue as well. I want it to look kind of natural coming into here. This being a light color, you know, has got its own kind of challenges that we've got to overcome. I'd say it's a pretty good start there. Getting a little zombie rot on the wet palette as well. A nice consistency just so we can come in here and pick out some lines. We're going to do kind of chunky edge highlights here. So that way we leave room to do our smooth edge highlights with our brighter color here in a moment. And of course our highlight colors are going to be the most desaturated color going on here. And again, letting this brush create some textures for us as we go. Just that little hint of blue. Now, if I wanted the best looking robe off of this, you know, the brush blending might have been the way to go from the very top. But as you know, brush blending is not a very quick process. It is something that can take a fair amount of work. But it's not uncommon that the more work you do, the better you can expect your results. But it's important as well to not judge a paint job that is an efficiency paint job to the same scale that you would somebody who's taking all the time to make those extra steps. And I'm just getting a little bit smaller with every pass with this color here. I'm going to go ahead and add some texture lines. Thin paint, thin lines. Trying to keep those lines moving in the same direction, reason being, I want to give it flow, right? I want you to kind of see which direction the folds are moving through that texture. And if we did something similar to what we did on the leather on the Frost Gargant, where there's a bunch of cross hatching, that does a good job of texture, does not do a good job of flow. kind of boring on its own, right? We're definitely relying on the relationship it's going to have with the armor panels to really make it interesting. And I'm just going to kind of jump back and forth a little bit. I've got some of that troll snot on here too, keeping it thinned. Get a nice glaze consistency off of it as well. Kind of do more of the same. Kind of diffuse some of that blue a little bit as well, as we're running this adjacent to it where it's in those recesses. We don't want it to be a shock to the senses. We want it to stand up really well, but we don't want it to be overpowering in such a way where it distracts you from everything else. That's how people see errors and mistakes. There's places to have high contrast or high visibility, and then there's places to have nice, subtle, and smooth. I've also been debating on maybe oil washes for something like this, and I still haven't come to a conclusion. Okay. Let's go ahead and crack open the highlight color. Hey, Tristan, how are you? Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so this is taking us out of the green world into the yellow world. And again, it's getting more and more desaturated the lighter those colors get. So this is yellow with just that touch of white to it. Now I don't want to dilute this too much. I want to get nice flow off of it, but we need to get a couple of our strongest edge highlights in. And we want to do that without having to do a bunch of passes to do it. You know, all of the white that's in this pigment right here, as you guys know, that white can get chunky on us through too many applications or layers of paint. So we're definitely going to try and avoid that. Keep it fairly smooth, but we also don't want it so thick that it immediately goes to that textured anyway, right? Textures are good, but only if we meant to. So let's just look at this from a point of the stuff that's facing the most upwards here. something kind of like that. Some of the edges is really easy. I can just hit it with the side of my brush. Others, like these flaps that are folding over themselves, you know, you got less than a millimeter in depth from the two pieces that are touching, so we just have to be fairly careful there to make sure we don't go too thick with our line. Make sure we don't hit what's underneath it. Certain places are satisfying, like right here. You can kind of hit both sides with a sideways brush. That feels nice. Now, I'm still not happy with the blue, guys. I'm still not happy with the blue. So we're gonna have to see what we can do about that. And I'm thinking likely bring that color even further down, thinning it out. And maybe try one more pass at the most important places for that blue to be through the airbrush. Let's get our highlights done and then we'll play it by ear. I'm back over here to the front. Little loincloth. Nice having this in sub-assembly, but of course there's downsides to everything. Downside is, you know, it's hard to know what's going to be visible once we attach it to the model without attaching it to the model. There's a large amount of that that's just going to be hidden behind. So we're just going to grab some of the highlights, even if they might get covered up once it attaches, because it's going to be easier to highlight that stuff now in the event that it is visible. If we wait until after it's back on, that could create some difficulties. And typically we want, consistent weight on the lines, right? We want all the lines of our edge highlights to be roughly the same thickness. Apparently is not the case tonight because this brush is kind of all over the place in terms of its line weights. But it's fair. It's fair. It's going okay. Everything's going to be fine, chat. At least that's what I believe. There's just a little bit of that yellow and a little bit of that mid-tone green. Down to a glaze. I just want to add a couple of high points to the model as well. Again, brush strokes all going the same direction. And they're all kind of following the natural contours of this cloak. Running this right alongside those edge highlights and then down into those greens. That's going to help us with, you know, kind of marrying the edge highlight into the rest of the paint, also kind of softening up the impact that it's having on it. Something that might not necessarily be necessary, but like we talked about with those line weights, this is helping unify those line weights just a little bit. If our edge highlight looks like it was painted on with a paintbrush, it's not a very good edge highlight. Should look like light reflecting off of a surface. Okay. We're going to let that sit for a moment. We're going to place it over top of the model here to get our color references and see how we like it. Kind of a quiet night so far this evening. Wonder what where everybody's at. Is there an event going on? I don't know. I'm glad to have you guys here though with me regardless. So our vibrancy contrast is working very well. By that I mean the desaturated next to the vibrant, I think, is working very well. Whether the colors are where I want them to be or not, I don't know. One mistake I did notice on the model, not a huge mistake, but when you look at how this lays on here and this goes across here, what we're doing is we're placing this across some of the most vibrant parts of that model. What I should have done is thought about that and had my light source coming from this direction instead of from this direction, and that would have allowed me to have these nice bright magenta colors over here and then the shadows cruising off in the other direction. A bit of a missed opportunity, but that is okay. A little apprehensive about using the airbrush, so we're going to just take and combine some of these colors. Make us a nice little teal right here. Very nice, very nice. Trucking right along, William. So when I did that Magneto video, I spent most of that video working to get the perfect blends on his cloak. That is not something we can afford to do on this one. What we're going to try and avoid here is having that bluish teal directly adjacent to the highlight color too, because that's too strong. But we're going to continue forth with just reinforcing these textures. How many of you guys got to tune in and check out Cryface's Captain America, or I'm sorry, Iron Man the other day? He got to do a little bit of non-metallic metal on that guy. He's looking pretty sharp so far. Still a ways to go before we sleep, you know what I mean? But, you know, that's going to be one of the standout models in that MCP range with the way he's treated it. Cryface, super, super talented painter. And we're basically an hour deep on painting this already. So I've got to get to a point very, very quickly that I'm happy enough with it. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and just drop this shoulder on here now. I think now is the time. Not really the easiest to slide into place. Tolerances are a little tight around here. So we're just going to go slow. Definitely like it a lot better against the rest of the bottle. But we do have a lot of dynamic colors we've painted into the base coats of this model that are basically disappearing behind this. So for the future, always think about what direction we want to go with it, with that lighting, considering all the different parts that go into it, not just, the model by itself. So lesson learned. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Won't lie to you, I don't love it. We're going to have to see how the rest of the composition comes together. Give that a moment to dry, stand up and stretch. I've got my script just about finished for our first video in our kind of educational series here. We're going to be tackling the color wheel. We're going to be talking about complementary colors, split complementary colors, triadic color schemes, tetradic color schemes, right? We're going to be talking about, hues and values, right? What is a color? A lot of some of it's some pretty basic stuff, right? I hope some of it gives you good insight, to how to navigate the color wheel and leverage it to your best benefit. So hopefully that's something of interest to you. Once I finish with this one, I'm curious to know from you guys what you think the next video might be that would be most beneficial to you. Still lots of stuff to figure out on this model. And I definitely do not believe that the shadows are deep enough. So we're going to do the bold thing, which in the future may be known as the stupid thing. But sometimes you got to do the bold thing to see if it's a stupid thing or not. Like William was talking about, we can always strip it. And we did get 3 of these boxes. I am lucky enough to have a couple extra of these guys if it just doesn't work out the way that I would want it to. But, we're going to keep working it. It might just be that, I don't love the color combination. That could very well be the thing. Like, maybe this blue is too vibrant. Maybe we should have gone that Kellyan green. What I can do is mix just a little of this green we're working with on our palette in with it to soften it up just a bit. That way that azurman is serving the purpose more of like a mother color rather than a direct color. Maybe that'll produce us, a result that we like. Just maybe. And so for this, because I've got so much of the model I want to try and avoid, we're just going to use tiny little bursts. Tiny little aimed bursts where I need it to be, rather than just holding it open, letting it spray. That is helping add a little bit of depth back to the colors, which is good. One of the problems I was having with it, volumetric's really hard to see the shape of the cloak. This will help that a bit, I think. There we go. Starting to get something we're a little happier with. Sometimes it is just easier to kind of have it in place. A little bit more dangerous, of course, to spray it on a model when we've got the other things alongside of it painted, but sometimes we got to do what we got to do. Okay, I think that is good enough. So we're going to let the cloak kind of hang out there for right now. Well, let's get the inside of this a little bit better. So many details getting covered up by that big old cloak. But that's good enough for government work. So let's start picking out some other things that we need to get on here in an interesting way. The tassels, for example. We are going to want something in the teal range that we can then build up in the direction that we want it. What does Two Thin Coats have to offer us for such a thing? This is a challenge, trying to figure out what colors that we want to work with. We're going to base coat it in with this turquoise right here. Two Thin Coats Sentient Turquoise here. Something dark enough that we can highlight up from. A little bit more blue in it than we're seeing elsewhere as well. I think that'll add an interesting feel to it. We are coming right over black with it, so we're going to need ourselves a couple of coats to get it where we want it to be. Have you guys heard of Goblin Hobbies yet? That is a collaborative project between Casey from eBay Miniature Rescue and Brent from Goobertown Hobbies. I, of course, saw a video. They did a collaboration video where they were using a stamp tool they created. I know I've mentioned it on a previous stream as well. You know, that is kind of made to replace doing transfers. Really innovative idea. I mean, considering not only those guys talented, they're super bright as well. So it's a really cool product. If you haven't checked it out, absolutely check it out. But I've been hearing about them from so many other people as well. My wife, for instance, shot me a message earlier. Said, Goblin Hobbies, Hobby Goblins, coincidence? So I did reach out to Brent. say, hey man, congrats on Goblin Hobbies from your friendly hobby goblins. I think that means since our names are so similar, we got to do ourselves a little collaboration video. So I'm going to keep hammering at them for that and see if we can't make something like that a reality. Because those guys are a couple of guys I've been watching since I first started, back into the hobby a few years back. And spent a ton of time on YouTube, spent a ton of time watching their channels as well. So having an opportunity to do a collab with them would be pretty awesome. I do know that in order for this channel to be successful, we have to start getting pre-recorded videos out. Right? I'd like to maintain some live painting on this channel. Because I just enjoy sitting around hanging out with you guys while I'm painting, And I can do that and not worry about whether or not it's helpful for growth of the channel or not, because, sometimes we just need to do the thing that we want to do because of something that we love. Right? Without that, what's all the work for, right? What's the point in it if we don't get something we love out of the exchange for the effort? So we're going to keep moving towards those pre-recorded, keeping, at least a single art stream for myself, a single art stream for Cryface every week. So this Thursday, we will not have a paint stream, and that will likely be the new schedule, where we're going to be in here painting on Monday afternoons for Wake and Make, Tuesday nights for Hobby Pants, and that'll about do it. All right, that'll be just about it for the live stream painting. But the hope is, of course, that opening up that time will allow us to really dig in on pre-recorded stuff. I've also got a lot of stuff brewing for the Hobby Goblins channel as well, where we get our game time in. A new project coming up for that. That's going to be a lot of fun too. Hopefully something that you guys enjoy. But it just comes down to time, right? How much time do we have? So we're going to take this Troll Snot Green, which was our darkest of the green colors. And we're going to add a little bit of a highlight. Now what I want to try and avoid doing is mixing a bunch of paints. Again, like the Giant, we did a lot of paint mixing on, but that was a one-off. This is something that's going to have to be done multiple times. So I don't want to have to worry about, what my paint mixes were later. I want to be able to just remember what colors we used and use that repeatedly. A bunch of color mixing, a bunch of different ratios. It's just not a smart way to paint an army. And your aspirations for your army should be a little different than an aspiration for, a showcase piece. So again, like something like Fulgrim, when we get an opportunity to do him, well, we'll probably do him with color mixing and all of the showcase little steps that go into really making something special. Because he can stand apart. There will only be one Fulgrim. So I'm just stippling some of this green down into the bottom of that blue. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. I kind of dig this. Again, for this we're looking for flow and opacity. Don't want to have to come back across it multiple times. Hello, Adam Peterson. Great to see you, my friend. Welcome back. Adam shared with me some stuff he is working on last night. Hopefully that made it into the Discord, so all these fine folks can also see that progress you're making. Getting some really cool things done. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but definitely would have been a little easier with this backpack and sub-assembly as well. Trying to get in behind this little crest on the back of them. Bit of a challenge. Yeah, definitely make sure you have a good time this weekend. I'm a little jealous we're not going to make it to that event up there. Hopefully JC can fix up that gargant from where they messed it up in shipping. Hopefully. All right, so that brings in some of those colors from the from that sash. Let's go ahead and grab just a little bit of this lighter yellow for just a couple of highlight points. Namely out here towards the end and the stuff facing up. Just a couple of these spots are really challenging to get to. Okay, good enough for government work. We're going to make a little glaze out of this sentient turquoise we've used. Run this in alongside the headdress here. Loosen it up just a little bit more. Cloak color is very nice. Contrast purple so well. Thank you, man. Thank you. I like the direction it's heading, but I know we're not where I need it to be yet. All right, that is not too shabby. Not too shabby. We're getting somewhere with it for sure. So we've got this icon, and then we have got some whips and chains. Let's do some easy stuff. I feel like I'm in easy stuff mode. And holy cow, it is almost 9 o'clock. So we do have to start pushing some big progress on this model as well. All right, well that Shyish is completely dead. And that looks like something I'm gonna need off the shelf because I don't have a backup here. I'll be right back, guys. Well, turns out Shyish is not in the range we have out on the shelves. So we're going to pivot. I like to use Shyish as a replacement for black. I think you've seen it a bunch of times in previous videos. It's not something new to me at all. But you know what? If I don't have the color, we still have painting to do. So we're going to take this Leviathan purple, which isn't as dark as I would want it to be for Shyish, but I think that we can make sure that it's dark enough. We're going to just paint over this stuff that ultimately is going to go gold. I do like to use Leviathan to shade gold, so using it as a base coat doesn't hurt either. And being that it's not over a white, even better, it's over top of a green that is opposite the color wheel. That means it's going to convey closer to Shyish than it would have conveyed to Leviathan. So we can make it work. Plus these tones are already in this model. So we're going to do this for these little sigils and for the chains and for that little strap across the top. Then we'll work our metallics in from there. All right, now I want to do my best to keep this off of the cloak. So nice and slow. Where possible, I want to still see that green through the links in the chain as well. So we don't want to fill up these chain links. In the future for test paints, what I also might do is a rank and file. A rank and file for these isn't going to have all the extra little details that we got to figure out. And sometimes limiting the number of variables in the experiment will help us get to the results that we want quicker. That being said, this is a super cool model, and I wanted to paint it regardless. So I'm definitely glad to be painting this particular one. And it will produce a lot more data than just one of our rank and file minis as well. So, still worth it. David D, great to see you. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. We are, doing the great experiment. Seeing if this is something that once it's done, that we like to paint up the whole army in, or whether we do another video with a completely different paint scheme. We can't make that decision until we fully get out of the ugly phase, as you know. So we've just got to keep pushing to get it where we want it to be. It's got some cool things going on with it, though. It's got some things I definitely like about it. Other things may not be exactly what I was expecting from them. But that also just goes to show, there is no perfect plan for paint. All hail the pivot. Now, I know a couple of David D's. Have we met at an event, David? I was just giving him a shot the other day. Okay, great. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, he actually sent me some pictures of those Sigmar models I sent you guys home with. Showed me some pictures of stuff he's painted. He's off to a great start. I will tell you the cape is looking better now that we're starting to get other colors blocking in around it. Something I'm a little happier with at the very least. It is a little bit of a bummer that that bright pink that we had on that shoulder is now hidden behind them draperies, but what can you do? Learn for next time. Yeah, I appreciate that, David. Chains, we're going to use that blue metallic. And then the sigils that are covering up that cloak right there. I don't know. What would you call this? Is that a brooch? Or Emperor's Children, a bunch of old ladies? Yeah, we're going to do those in gold. Okay, those are blocked in fairly decent. We're going to do something interesting with this sword too, so let's go ahead and block it in with that purple, get some darkness to it. Thinking likely a gold handle. Paint around the hand since we basically have the hand where we want it. Looks we've got a little bit of an alignment issue with that back cloak. Maybe we fix it. Maybe. Welcome into the new folks just joining the stream. See a couple of folks have added on. Make sure you say hello. I'd love to say hello back. If this is your first time to the stream too, I'd love to know where you're watching from. And of course, any questions that you might have, let me know. I'm happy to give you my humble opinion or my brazen and arrogant opinion, depending on what you want from me. My wife will tell you, I got opinions. Going to go ahead and keep this brush hydrated. Want to keep that contrast out of these ferrules. These are very small details, so I'm using a nice brush with contrast, which is, you know, kind of a no-no. But you're not my real dad, so I'll take that. I'm also compelled to keep these guys nice and clean. You know, I love to use my weathering effects and, you know, getting that grim dank going, you know what I'm talking about? But I feel like a lot of these guys should be pretty clean. You know, they're not really dirty, they just nasty. Rob knows what I'm saying. After all, Rob is equal parts Slanesh and Nurgle. If edge highlighting is your least favorite, then what is your favorite style technique to paint with? So I like faux realism a lot. You know, faux realism is going to come into, you know, getting some basic straightforward gradients onto things, but then using techniques to like really add in realism. And the easiest way to accomplish that is through battle damage and atmospherics. Things like dry pigments, things like sponge chipping, you know, those are trying to convince you a thing is real, right? They're you know, attempting to change the composition of a thing from a small plastic thing to a small thing that's got metal parts and you know, other various textures and materials, right? That's my absolute favorite way to paint. It's very intuitive for me. It allows me up front to be pretty messy with a lot of the things that I'm doing, knowing that some of the techniques that I'm going to employ are going to just hide it, because they're going to distract you away from, again, looking at, you know, you're eating a soup rather than reading the ingredients list of a soup, right? If that checks out. When you paint really clean, every single brushstroke is there on display to be inspected, right? And faux realism allows me to say, hey, look over here, right? It's like a 3-card Monte or something, in a way. Right, so that's my comfort zone. Now, I haven't done a lot of it on the channel, you know, because like we talked about, it's I could be good at a thing, but if I only ever do the thing I'm good at, I'm not going to get better at other things. So that's where this is a great challenge, you know, to really try and attack something that I can't just, you know, hide behind pretty easy techniques and actually have to, you know, slow down and expand my toolbox. You know, there's a time for each, right? If I'm painting to a deadline, I'm trying to get orcs ready for another event, and I've got units that I've got to get painted. Well, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of experiments during that time frame. I'm going to go right to the tried and true, the techniques that work, that I can get done nice and efficient. So some of this, I'm using some of my tricks from that paint style to try and accomplish this here. Such as, you know, getting my paint going and then using a contrast like I am right here to, air quotes here, black it out, right, to go ahead and get other colors involved. That's something I do quite frequently in the other paint style. But things like trying to work out all the textures on the robes, or like, you know, focusing a whole lot on the color theory of it rather than the technique of it, that's stuff that I typically wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on for a rush job army paint. I think it's moving in a nice direction, though. I definitely will say that by the time I'm done here, I will have learned a lot that might become more standard techniques for me as I go. But for now, I'm still not completely comfortable with it all. At some point, I'll do a non-metallic metal on stream, which doesn't necessarily excite me, but for that same reason I just mentioned. You can get good at something, you got to do it. You got to be willing to fail, and you probably will. Right? Not to be negative, but to be realistic. Set your expectations that your first time you do something, well, it probably ain't going to go exactly the way you want it to, right? But if you know that going into it, then you won't feel some kind of way when that turns out to be the case. You can prepare yourself for it and be ready to take a couple of punches and then get back in the fight. What's going on, KR Quintero? How are you? Haven't seen the mini in a bit. Looking great from here. Thanks, Kevin. The other bit of a challenge is figuring out what to do for him on a base. Yeah, it's nice to have like multiple techniques that you can kind of turn to, Adam, for those pivot moments. I'm just taking this sentient turquoise that we've worked into those tassels. It's actually kind of the blue that I would have wanted to go for my shadowing in here. And so we're just glazing it into some of those recesses. And that's really going to help make that pop a lot more. Let's get that focus right. Really loose paint. Want to avoid it pooling. But this chain is going to be casting a natural shadow on the cloth underneath it. And so having this color to be able to go around the chain, I think is working out all right. Now it might call for me to come back and do a couple more spot highlights in certain places on the model. But the shadows were quite flat, so I definitely like the dimensionality this is adding to it. I said I needed to get down to the cloak so I can move on to other things. What's up? Back on the cloak. Let's go. I don't know. Well, worth it. I think that was worth it. Fingernail's a really good spot to test the opacity on a thing. It pretty closely mimics a plastic finish with a primer on it. Because, you know, your nail is fairly smooth, but it's got, you know, some roughness to it. And that's basically what primer is doing, is creating a tooth on a smooth plastic surface. So you want to see how paint is going to settle, you know, use that thumbnail. You're not using it for anything else. Jeez. Okay, let's go ahead and start. Well, I've got a little bit more I want to get in here. A little bit more I see that. Just really want to pump these values. Okay, much better, much better. So let's go ahead and jump into our metallics that we used last week. That is, of course, blue steel and the School for Ants, and of course, glistening gold. Again, this is the softest gold in the Tooth and Coats range, and as the name would suggest, blue steel is, well, it's a metallic that's got a blue sheen. I do tend to use a handle, you see here. So back at the house, the home studio, I'm pretty ghetto, right? I'll take a glue stick, melt the end of a glue stick, jam it onto the base, because I can always pry that off later, and then it won't come detached. One of the problems that I have, especially with newer cork, is that newer cork has got a waxy film on it that just doesn't hold very well. And so I'll have it on the handle for a while, and then the handle will give up on me. And then I'm just kind of stuck, you know, with the model off of its handle. So we're just going to go in and drop some gold on all of this purple, leaving purple in the deepest recesses as our shadows. You know, we may even come back and glaze some Leviathan into the deepest recesses, especially if we happen to mess up. But we want this thing to look like it's purple. Matter of fact, we're going for efficiency here, guys. Right? We talked about it. We've been talking about it the whole time. So we're just going to paint this gold. And then we are going to use that Leviathan as a wash to drop into the recesses and shade our golds. So let's just get that in here. This stream is going quick tonight. So let's try and get this guy where I'm happy enough with him. You know, we're going to be back at it, of course. For those of you guys just tuning in, we are going to be taking Thursdays to start towards our pre-recorded videos. A lot of educational stuff we want to put out, but also other projects that we'd like to get out there that, you know, you can sit down and you can see the whole project in 15 or 20 minutes, rather than tuning in for, you know, one or more 3-hour paint streams. That being said, I want to keep streaming Tuesday nights, live stream for the Hangout paints, maybe even work on some of the projects that we're doing for pre-recorded, maybe do some of the grunt work here on stream with you guys, but mainly be able to do like a bunch of other things, right? We've got, for instance, I spent this weekend painting up a heinous amount of Marvel Crisis Protocol terrain. I've got it about 75% done. There's a lot of finishing stuff that I could do right here on a paint stream that I think would be pretty interesting, and kind of let you guys get caught up with a project without dragging you along for the entire project. So Thursday nights we're going to be using for that kind of stuff moving forward. So you won't see me Thursday. Unless, of course, you're a member of the Gob Squad, and then you'll see me at that content planning meeting. And then what we'll probably do is take these raised details, all the Slaneshi icons, and keep all the Slaneshi icons in that blue silver, like we've got up top here. While I've got gold in the brush too, I'm just going to grab some of these other pieces where maybe the gold isn't fully the full opacity, and just add a little bit more to it. But already that's really starting to pop pretty nice. We're going to do his little Slaneshi nipple ring in that blue silver. We're going to do the chains in that blue silver. We're going to do the hilt of this sword in the gold. Again, I'm using this Artist Opus brush tonight as a workhorse brush instead of a super nice brush, right? Not advisable. Strongly recommend you have synthetics for metallics, synthetics for contrast. But as long as you're careful and you can keep paint out of the ferrule, right there where the bristles meet the metal, right, then it's not going to be too bad for you. So the metallics can be a little bit hard on your bristles as well. A bunch of little sharp pigments, whether it's actual metal flakes or whether it's mica. Both of them have got kind of an abrasive thing. It's like putting sand in your Teflon or something, right? So we're just going to use it sparingly. Keep our brush hydrated so that way it can take that abrasiveness. Abrasiveness is much harder on a dry brush. One of the cool things about doing the educational videos is that as I'm doing all of my research to write my script, I'm learning stuff. I think it's important to note that no matter how comfortable you get, there's almost always something new to learn. Make yourself open and available to those lessons. And then I think you'll be surprised at just how much you can soak up and how much you can improve, even if just incrementally. Let's make this little thing right here gold. Just make it a little bit different than the chain that's holding it. And then gold across this boy here as well. All right, once this on here, I think I've got most of the gold that's needed to get got. Maybe a little bit on the hilt or the handle of the pistol that is on his backpack. There's a little bit of trim on there. Work that into gold. So whatever color we decide for the glow on the eyes will be the same thing that we put for a glow on that chainsword. I don't know what it is just yet. We've still got to figure that out. All right. Something else I'm seeing here that we got to figure out, which won't be tonight. But, you know, he's got this kind of, I don't know, what's the best way to put it? Half of a chap, maybe, a one-leg chap on this left leg here. Probably be pretty cool to do it in flesh tones. So that might be something that we revisit. Now, I'm not going to be doing another one of these on stream, so I will share with you the things that I do off of stream to kind of bring you up to speed on where we're at. We're going to sit there for a moment, let that dry down, and then go ahead and add in that purple shading. Using Photoshop as a way to plot out your colors and test your color interactions, it's an absolutely great way to do that. KR, thank you for bringing that up. That's a good idea basically for everybody to kind of give a shot at. There's all kinds of free software out there. If you don't have Photoshop, there is free software to have. I know GIMP. Can't remember what the acronym is for, but that used to be out there for free. I imagine it still is. Yeah, that's good feedback, KR. Trying to get in the habit of being able to paint with this in a way that allows me to see what I need to see and let you see it. Natural position does tend to bring it down in this direction. So, you know, bear with me. You know, I've been painting for a long time, but in front of a camera has still been a relatively short time. So, lots of improvements to make in that arena for sure. All right, let's get some of this blue steel out here. One of these days soon, I also need to take apart this desk and reconfigure a few things on it, and that might actually help being able to get the camera into a slightly better position. But I will be conscious of it, for sure. And I know Kenny has been doing it for a long time, 12 or 13 years, hasn't he? So if he's not good at the camera stuff by now, you know. I'm hoping when I do the reconfigure for the desk too, it can help knock down some of the shaking. Now for these chains, we just get the most raised parts of them. We don't need to paint everything that we painted purple. All right, I think we're almost there. I see a couple of the little things down here. Let's get that silver down inside of there. Hey, I appreciate it 100%, KR. Being able to get feedback is the way that we all improve at anything that we're doing, right? And especially for something like this, if you've got a painting stream where somebody can't see what you're painting, well, you're missing the whole point of it. So definitely keep me informed. Let me know, like, the things that you can see, the things that you can't see. All feedback, positive and negative, is all valuable. Okay, a lot of it's pretty quick, so it's a little messy. But sometimes that's what it takes to get an army painted. Quick and messy. All right, let's make sure that dries, and then we're going to be coming back with our Leviathan. We're going to make ourselves a nice little wash out of it. It's super tricky for sure. I tried to record videos for teaching myself. Not easy. It's every bit as challenging as I thought it would be. I never thought, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go crush it. How easy is it? Like, how hard could it be? Rather, like, I knew from the get-go. We bought the equipment to make art videos like 5 years ago, and I determined at that time, hey, this is too hard. Then after years in the 40K scene, I finally just said, you know what? We've got the equipment. We should just try it. We should just, again, like we talk about with painting, you can be bad at a thing long before you get good at it. And you gotta be bad to get good. So, I appreciate you guys being here along the ways through the good and bad of it all. Hopefully a year's time or however long, that we can see that market progress. See if we can't bring some of these details in the gold out. Again, back to the Leviathan purple, very, very watered down. Not a whole lot on my brush. I wanted to grab those recesses and collect there, but I don't really want it to stain all of the gold. So we're going to focus towards the bottoms of it, get the biggest collection there, because remember, this is also representative of shadow. One of the plus sides of streaming is that I spent a couple of years painting almost exclusively orcs. Then, we started our commission stuff, and that opened the door for me to do other things besides orcs. But orcs were still very vital. I was still traveling, competing, and always having to add to my existing orc roster. So like every other thing was an orc thing. Next thing you know, I've got 90% of the orc codex painted up. Being able to get out here and venture into other things. A lot of times, like we talked about earlier, Adam, we talked about how like we get styles that we like paint in, and like you kind of have to like find ways to break yourself out of it. Well, when you're painting an army, once you've decided on a style, like that's the style that you paint. You don't want to have like a non-metallic character and then like, faux realism on a couple of your troops and then like cell shaded on a couple of other troops. You want something cohesive. And so like that is the cool thing about going about it in this direction, is that I can break that mold. Matter of fact, there really isn't a mold at this point because I'm just learning as I go. Okay, so I'll probably come back at a later date and hit those chains with just a little bit more silver on the surface. Depending on how long this process takes, it might not even be a later date. We might do it here in just a moment. A couple of the little details that we'll get figured out, like on the backpack. You got some air hoses and things like that. Got to figure out what we want to do with the rest of that gun. Water down even further. We're going to hold this upside down. We're going to drop a little purple here. Drop a little purple here. Drop a little purple here. We're going to flip it over and we're going to do something similar. Oh, good. We missed all of the wet paint on the palette, dropping him. Well, I think we've got a few moments. Let's go ahead and revitalize that silver here in just a moment. it is nice having like a board game or something, very low stakes, to be able to play around with paint on. I've got a copy of Relic, which is, there's an old game called Talisman. Relic is a 40K skinned version of that game, but all of the play pieces are mini busts. You know, a bunch of different factions in there. And that's one of these days, like I talked about at some point I have to do a non-metallic metal video. I'll probably use one of those busts to do that experiment. So this part I got to be just a little bit neater on. Basically cleaning up some of that purple. Okay, I do see a spot where I missed some purple shade I need to get back on there. So we'll deal with that in a moment. Hey, Google it. Google it. It's a board game. You travel around travel around the game board, fighting various foes as they appear, gaining levels, collecting gear, spending trophies to level up. Several different scenarios with it. Had a lot of fun with it through the years, but you know they're all just still gray plastic minis, and will be way cooler and way easier to tell your model apart. You know, a lot of times, with a nice paint job on them. That being said, I have a ton, and I mean a ton, of Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff to get painted, and that is another situation where you have a 10-man roster, and that's it, just 10 man. So I could also take and say, all right, well, these 10 man we're going to do cell shaded, right? This 10 man will do faux realism. This 10 man, you know, so on and so forth. Add some versatility back to it. Can also be very, you know, satisfying too in the fact that, you know, you're not just painting the same things over and over and over again. Okay, I want to drop a little bit more blue on the underside there. A little more blue here. One thing I will say, Adam, is painting orcs, because of how much I've done that paint style and how comfortable I am with it, you know, I find it pretty easy to get a pretty satisfying paint job on them. And that is something that is nice when I do have, like, you know, hey, a new character comes out and it is just like a one-off model. You know, the members only on the Goblins, Hobby Goblins channel, where we do our cave reps, I've still got some of those first painting streams over there. And, you know, over there I did quite a bit of orc stuff, like characters and whatnot. And it is nice sometimes, especially after experimenting, to go back to something that you need to do, that you've done a bunch of, and just kind of get an easy win. You know? There's a lot of question marks when you're painting outside of your preferred paint style. A lot of question marks. That ugly phase seems to go on forever. So sometimes it is just nice to be able to be like, hey, I know what I'm doing here. I know how to do this. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Put a lot of love into those orcs, man, and a lot of miles behind them, too. All the places those guys have been. Fairly certain that my orcs have seen more of the country than my wife has. I mean, one could make an argument she's the lucky one. You know, she gets to go stay home and hang out with the dogs. And I love my dogs, but they are too wild to try and train to bring to events. I will say, at the top of it, I was not very excited about this cloak. And I do like those colors now a lot more. It's really grown on me. All right, let's hit that shoulder pad where we didn't get that purple built up like we wanted it. Check our opacity. A little too thick. Loosen it up. Check the opacity, much better. We're going to be focusing this around the spikes. Letting it kind of pool up and collect there. And then while it's loose like this, we're also going to run along the sides. To really ramp that shadow up. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I turned to my color wheel to pick the colors. So I was pretty confident going into it today that the colors would work. But then again, like, once you start doing something, that's when you find out the actual results. It's one thing to like know something works in theory, and another to like get it to a point you like it in execution. And the colors that I picked on their own just weren't right. So through everything that we've been doing here today, that adding the different glazes for the shadows and everything, just staying on course just helped us push it to a point that we could be happy with it. Well, there you have it. That is the Emperor's Children in a nutshell. Again, we've got a couple of things left to do. Maybe pushing that to a fleshy color. Maybe we do it, maybe we don't. Picking out a couple of details here in the back right now, that's just very dark and kind of nondescript. So being able to add a few more elements back here, like I actually see we can quickly do this. Silver out these exhaust vents. That will help us differentiate the shape of this backpack as well. Without it, it just kind of all looks like one big purple block, and you've got some really cool shapes and stuff in here. Little chain holding up the gun, that's silver. Pick out these hoses too. Yeah, that already helps a little bit. But there you have it. That is our session tonight. We've got all the colors decided. When it's time to paint the army, it's going to be really easy to reference this video and determine what colors that we want to get into the rest of the army. You know, we can do things like slightly changing the tones of the cloak for each individual character that might have those same sort of decorations on them, you know, so that way you can kind of have like squad markings in a degree if we are so inclined. But it's a pretty simple color scheme. Again, just turning to the color wheel to like make sure that we've got good contrast. And of course, for this one, we are working, it's closer to tetradic, like with 4 colors, right? But, you know, they work. They're nice and simple, and shouldn't take a whole lot of work. This has got about 5 hours so far into it through the experimental process of if I'm tasked to paint another one and I have an example of this one like I do, I could probably cut that, you know, into 3, maybe 3.5 hours. And, you know, because it's not as much time sitting around wondering, like trying to figure it out. So it's success, if nothing else, in the fact that we were able to determine those colors. I will be going back through, cleaning up some of these details, you know, doing the varnish, you know, that whole thing. May or may not paint up that leg into be something slightly different. But, you know, overall, I would say it has been a success. I definitely want to offer my appreciation to all of you guys. You know, frankly, I'm half tempted to stay on and find something else to paint, just simply because I see that our viewership has been steadily growing throughout the night. But unfortunately, it is that time for us to go ahead and close this one up. So appreciate you guys being here, spending your time with me on this lovely Tuesday evening. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. Maybe even, you know, were inspired to do or try something outside of your norm. Big shout out, of course, to our sponsors. Spray Gunner with all of our airbrush accessories, Transatlantis Games Tooth and Coats paint, Artis Opus with the brushes we've been using, Game Envy with the gamers, the painting aids like our handles and our wet palette here. Really appreciate all the support from those sponsors and from all of you just being here hanging out with us. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. I would absolutely love to have you here in a more permanent sense. And you know, keep in mind, for all those vendors, well, you can find all of their links right there in the video description. So definitely hit them up for great products. Again, once again, really appreciate you guys being here. Until next time. Keep your pants on.